All righty. Looks like everybody's here. Thanks for joining, everyone. We've got a special day today. We've actually brought in a special host with us today. We have Patrick Moorhead, CEO and Chief Analyst from Moor Insights and Strategy. And then on the Broadcom side today, we have Prashanth Shenoy, Vice President of Marketing of VCF Division of Broadcom, and Shobhit Bhutani, who's our Principal Product Marketing Manager with VCF Division. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us today.
Hey,
Thanks for having us. Appreciate that.
So Patrick, you're the master of ceremonies today. So why don't you go ahead and take it away?
That's great. So listen, as an analyst, industry analyst, I run a small analyst company, but the last 2 years has almost been like the AI show, right? Starting off with consumer and seeing some interesting tricks that we can do in our browser and our smartphone, but over the last year, we've seen the AI that's required to generate enterprise value is very different from that. And while there might be some debates in the analyst community and even in the consulting community on where that value is coming from, which can be the front end or the back end, it really doesn't matter because the requirements to derive value, whether it's in marketing, sales, customer service, ERP, financing, engineering, product line management, legal, human resources, the infrastructure is very similar. And I, like you, get feedback from end customers. And I'm curious, what are some of the challenges that you're hearing from enterprises regarding generative AI in the enterprise?
Yeah, I think I can get started and Shobhit can also jump in here. In one word, Patrick, I think privacy. Last year, when we were looking at the generative AI space in general, the most inbound requests that we got from our customers were, hey, in the consumer space, there's a lot of potential for Gen AI. We see a lot of potential also in the enterprise space, but we are extremely concerned about the privacy aspect from the intellectual property, from the proprietary data that we have, as well as the access of that data, who gets access to what, right? So how can you help us leverage all of the beauty and the potential that we see with Gen AI in the consumer space, but marry it with the enterprise requirement of privacy, data compliance, industry regulation, etc., that pretty much every organization that we work with need to address. So that is, I think, by far the biggest challenge. And you know that most of these large language models for Gen AI are based on open source and public cloud-based projects, right? And you really have not a whole lot of control to say what is the data that the LLM model ingests, because it's all publicly available data that will subject me to IP infringement or my proprietary data that I have to be compliant with, right? And that is where I think this becomes very, very critical in the enterprise space. Of course, you want to marry that with the cost, the performance requirements that also a lot of our customers are looking towards. We all know that GPUs are, first of all, very expensive and hard to get. So every customer wants to make sure it's highly optimized, whatever Gen AI workloads that they're running and the applications that they're using is highly cost optimized, and it provides the right performance for their business outcome and use cases. So I think those are some of the key challenges that we are looking for.
Yeah, I think you echoed a lot of those that I hear out there as well. And when I talk to enterprises about, hey, why aren't you putting the foot on the gas a lot quicker? It's typically around wanting to make sure that their intellectual property is not being shared with their competitors in the entire world, and their data management strategy is solid, right? And part of that is the Generative AI, while it will help singularly in areas like sales and finance, the true full value of generative AI is when you pulling different datas out there that haven't necessarily been shared together to really light this up. So it looks like our experiences are very similar, Prashanth.
Yeah. And
And if
Shobhit,
I'm,
did you want to add something?
yeah, and if
Sure,
I may,
please, Shobit.
yeah, and I was just going to add a couple of interesting data points I just heard, right? Is 74% of employees in companies are already using generative AI tools without, most of them are not approved. So the amount of risk that the company is encountering today is massive, right? Because as we can imagine, 74% people do not do everything right at the very first time. Like people make mistakes all the time. And then the biggest example that I can think of in GenAI and ChatGPT were very, very brand new. It's pretty well published example. There's a certain electronics company based outside of the United States in which the corporate coders basically put in some very confidential corporate code inside an open model, very well known open model, and that information was sucked in as a training data points, right? So privacy is so critical, and that became one of the biggest flashpoints in generative AI and the risks, right? And this is where, like Prashanth was saying, we very quickly heard a lot of feedback from our customers, and we knew right on that privacy was number one. And so everything around our platform, and what you're going to hear from Prashanth and myself today, is around privacy, right?
Yes,
Because it's a privacy first approach.
yeah, two things I like that you brought up. First of all, employees are using it regardless of what IT says. And, we see this in every major transition in the industry. We saw it
Yeah.
with the web, we saw it with e-commerce, social, local, mobile, data, online data backup, right? We saw it there. People just emailing files back and forth. And the second is great examples of using consumer generative AI, trying to use it in the enterprise comes with its perils. So now that we kind of set the table here, let's talk about what VMware is doing. So talking about the challenges and objections out there right now, what is your overall approach to enterprise AI, and maybe also talk about how it's unique?
Yeah. Yeah. I think let me start off like in a simple, bold statement. We want to democratize generative AI for enterprises, right? While making it easy for them to leverage their existing platform to run generative AI and the use cases on top of that, right? So, and we've developed this approach, which frankly is not just our approach. We call it an industry approach on private AI, right? Which is
Right.
to balance this business and operational gains that everybody wants to get from generative AI with the need for privacy, control, choice of the data and the models that they want to use and where they want to run it, right? So that's in short our approach, right? Bringing the best of both worlds together. So, and we have a particular product out there that is now generally available, which is our VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA, which is a jointly engineered, collaborated solution that we have worked with NVIDIA that helps customers run Gen AI use cases and applications in the confines of their own private data center in using their proprietary data, but having the choice of how they want to run it, which LLM models they want to run it, but on the same platform, VMware Cloud Foundation platform that they use to run their other modern workloads and business critical application. So for us, it feels like it's very, very important to meet customers where they are in their journey towards Gen AI, but make it as turnkey and simple as possible. Because as with every big technology with a lot of hype, there's a lot of choices, there's a lot of use cases, there's a lot of silos and complexity that our customers have when they try to cobble it all together. So our job as a company is to create a platform with the right use cases that we have already curated and validated, build the right partnership that can bring those together and provide it as an offer out there in the market that customers can get started with the right use case in a crawl, walk, run phase.
Yeah, I like thinking of goals like this as the easy button, right? Enterprises need the easy button. This is so complex. If you just look at the workflows that have to go into place, if you look at the resources that need to be shared, even GPU resource sharing is difficult. I mean, and as we've seen, it's worth more than gold. If you look at the prices of some of these NVIDIA GPUs today. We talked a little bit about how you're partnering with NVIDIA on here. Uh, Full name is VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. Can you maybe drill down a little bit more into the partnership and what does this mean to customers? What is the benefit of doing this?
Yeah. And I'll start off, and Shobhit, you can add in, right? So first of all, it's a real product. It's a jointly developed Gen AI platform by Broadcom and NVIDIA. And the key use case for that is customers can deploy their Gen AI and their modern AI workloads a lot faster, use their proprietary data to do fine tuning, inferencing, customize the LLM model, deploy low hanging fruit use cases like RAG, right? Like retrieval augmented generation workflows, and run inference workloads in their own data center while
Right.
addressing the privacy, choice, cost, performance, and compliance concerns, right? So it has three layers to the product, right? One is the VMware Cloud Foundation product itself, right? So that is our infrastructure, private cloud infrastructure platform with compute, network, storage, automation, and operations all built in to work as a single integrated product, right? And customers use that to run their business critical applications today, right? Like VDI, SQL servers, Oracle, SAP, as well as their modern applications running on Kubernetes, right? So Gen AI becomes yet another application for them to run on VCF. So that's layer number one. Layer number two is we have fine-tuned VCF specifically to make Gen AI run more efficiently. So things like deep learning VMs that we have put in, things like support and management of Postgres and vector database, which is really needed for use cases like RAG and inferencing that I talked about, right? So, and things like better GPU monitoring, visibility, etc., that we were just talking about. If GPUs are very expensive, you need a way to manage this in a very effective manner that is needed. So that's pretty much what this platform provides. And Shobhit, maybe you can add more to that.
Yeah. And I think Prashant did a fabulous job of kind of giving an overall summary there. Like if I step back for a second and look at the platform, right? It's the the number one virtualization leader, the number one platform leader who can provide a phenomenally scalable virtualization platform. We invented it like 20 years back. That's why another massive company just purchased us 6 months back. So the biggest virtualization company partnering with the biggest GPU provider, the biggest AI/ML provider, and that's what this platform provides. The easy button, like you were saying, Patrick, about you start at the virtualization layer, and providing the wide infrastructure that VMware Cloud Foundation provides, and then you bring in all those cool functionalities that Prashant was just explaining. So you get very quickly to be able to get your infrastructure in a place where you can now start deploying Gen AI models. And that's where NVIDIA Enterprise gives all those cool functionalities to be able to spin up Gen AI models. And the biggest cool thing I liked about it in GTC, particularly a couple of months back, right, is GTC is when this platform went generally available. And it was fantastic to see, Jensen raving about NVIDIA NIM functionality, right, during GTC. And guess what? We'd been engineering that entire thing a year and a half in advance with NVIDIA. So he announced it 15 minutes later, right after his keynote ended. That's when our general availability announcement went in. NIM was right on the top, right? So, NVIDIA NIM is going to be a phenomenal functionality that just went GA as well a couple of weeks back from the NVIDIA side as well, right? So the ability to put Gen AI models in this containerized layer that Jensen talked about a lot during GTC, that gives you the next level of the easy button. Great infrastructure, easily set up for AI ML, and then finally get the Gen AI models easily spun up through NVIDIA NIMs and all the phenomenal things that NVIDIA offers.
Yeah, none of this stuff happens overnight. And in fact, I was at your Explorer years ago where you brought it out as an architecture, and now it's a GA product. But these things are so very complex, and I think we found in any type of technology, to have the easy button requires a lot more work than, let's say, I call it bag of parts, which is okay. Here's what we've done. Now you need to put this together on your own. So it was very, first of all, you got ahead of the curve, which I think is really good, and then you integrated it to make it a lot easier, and you're hitting you're hitting the buttons that make sense, right? Whether it's customizing, fine tuning LLMs, using RAG on top of that, running inference workloads, data centers, even on the data center edge, colos, wherever. So there are a lot of choices out there, and quite frankly, on the public cloud side, they're not addressing the needs of on-prem or private AI. Sure, you can have a Kubernetes management layer, but that's not AI. And there's a couple other competitors over there. And by the way, there's also do-it-yourself, right? Where, quite frankly, up to this point, that's what a lot of enterprises are doing. So I'm going to give both of you the chance to talk about the uniqueness of the platform with all the different choices that enterprises have to make here.
Yeah, we've actually got a question here about VMware Private AI. If this is a philosophy approach.
Prashanth, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, well, private AI in general, as a concept, as I mentioned, it's an industry approach, I would say, right? Which is around, hey, take the operational benefits of Gen AI, marry that with the privacy requirements of most enterprises that have custom proprietary data and intellectual property, and bring it together. The private AI foundation with NVIDIA is an actual product that we are delivered using the architectural approach that private AI needs and provides, right? So that's how I would put it. Behind every product and architectural approach is a philosophy, right? So you can call it a mix of a philosophy with very clear guidelines and guardrails on why this product was created in the first place and what are the blueprint that adheres to, because especially when a hyped up technology like Gen AI comes, we could literally see after Explore everybody saying, oh, we do privacy, ours is a private AI platform. So it's very important for us as vendors to work together to say, hey, let's define what a private AI means, right? What are the guardrails around what we mean by privacy? What do we mean by cost? What do we mean by performance? What do we mean by compliance requirements? And let's work together to build that, because we are in no like putting our head in the sand to say we by ourselves are going to create this private AI industry, right? Like VMware, even when we are an independent company, always dependent on a strong ecosystem partners, whether it's our OEM partners, whether it's our ISVs, whether it's all of the key capabilities that we brought into the platform. We always made sure that we work together to deliver that. And this is the same now with private AI, right? It's an industry standard that VMware has a very clear point of view on and a product offering in place with NVIDIA to go help solve enterprise Gen AI use cases.
Yeah, and by the way, from an analyst point of view, I just want to say I've never talked to any enterprise CIO that said they didn't want private AI. Now, they might not be using those exact words, and they're asking for privacy, control, the ability to do it in their own data centers or their own colos that they manage, or even the enterprise edge. So, yeah, I definitely, this is not just a VMware thing. It's something. I mean, this is what enterprises want.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
and this struck a chord with me, right? Like when I think about privacy in general, right? Let's take a step down back to VCF in general, VMware Cloud Foundation for a second. VMware Cloud Foundation is, the core is vSphere, NSX, vSAN, and then adding a whole bunch of other stuff that, that are very unique to the value that VMware Cloud Foundation provides. But at the core of VMware Cloud Foundation, you get very, very cool functionalities that are inbuilt into each one of these packages, like network isolation, security isolation, the ability to have, VPNs, the ability to do, multi-factor authentication, stuff that are the core of what privacy is all about, right? The ability to do network blocking if that's what the admin chooses to go do. Things of that nature are how we make this very unique platform from a privacy perspective. It's a privacy first, highly engineered approach. And like Prashanth was saying, with our own philosophy on how we want to approach this, but the approach is very highly engineered to build in and leverage each of these components inside VMware Cloud Foundation to give you that core privacy and security.
Yeah. And I think, Patrick, to your question around the uniqueness of the platform, um, it's important when these new technologies come into place. There's always the business benefit and the technical benefits of what this can provide, but it's always a balance, especially for CIOs and CFOs, to balance it with the cost needs, right? So nobody has unlimited IT budget put in place every time a new technology comes in place, right? So they are looking, and GPUs, we have already had discussions on how expensive and how hard it is to get. So it's very critical that any organization that looks towards privacy or Gen AI has both of these factors put in place, and evaluate vendors to say, hey, provide me these, but also do it at a cost factor that is efficient for my IT budget put in place. And that's where I feel the uniqueness of our platform comes into picture. Shobhit mentioned the whole genesis of VMware started because our sole purpose in life was to abstract complexity away from the underlying infrastructure and provide the maximum possible value of your existing investment. Back in the days, it was server, then it became storage, then it was networking, and then all around management, right? And we take the same approach to Gen AI, right? So we want to make sure your GPUs are utilized to the best possible extent. The infrastructure is fine-tuned for you to support all of the different choice of LLM models. The infrastructure is open enough so you can work with enough ISVs to build into the system. And more importantly, as Shobhit mentioned, it's secure from the ground up. For us, every feature that we built into VCF is a security feature for us, right? Like everything from secure boot to VM encryption to network isolation that we talked about is all built in from the ground up. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel just for Gen AI, because the platform is inherently secure and, more importantly, resilient. So that our application developers don't need to build resiliency in their platform. We do it in the infrastructure itself. So things like DRS and vMotion have been very, very critical for our customers to run their workloads and not be worried about infrastructure downtime, because they can move their workloads without having to care about, like, hey, will the applications go down if I move these? So all of those capabilities are brought in to Gen AI with the additional functionality around privacy, choice, performance, etc., that we talked about. So that's what I call kind of the uniqueness of our approach as well as our platform.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Shobit.
no, I was just going to jump in just real quick on this, Patrick, is, we talked a lot about privacy, right? But there's also the other thing that customers are very concerned about, right? What about infrastructure performance, right? And if you go back to the fact that VMware's invested, a lot of money and a lot of time and investment in DRS, right? And then the DRS gives the ability, between DRS and the capabilities inside our, the consoles that we provide, we give things like GPU monitoring, instant cloning, and stuff which basically gives you the ability to really take performance to the next level. And then from cost standpoint, we're kings of virtualization. So guess what? We virtualize GPUs as well, really well, right? So that functionality gets better and better and better every release version that we come out with, right? And the ability to do a full now what one of the big things that I was very excited about, particularly last time, was this GPU dashboard, right? That looks at the all of your GPU footprint, right, across your entire GPUs for GPU footprint, and now you can see, hey, here's this work GPU is getting a little bit less, you're not getting peak performance. It's got a temperature issue. There's got a power issue, things like that. So those small tweaks, which look small in the beginning, right? But when you actually start adding up all those incremental benefits, is really where cost as well as performance is really good for this platform.
By the way, those small tweaks, let me give you a little factoid. In the public cloud world, every dollar invested in a CPU yields $3 of revenue, and every $1 in a GPU yields $8. So you can see why you would want to be super efficient in your own private AI cloud with your GPUs. So yeah, that is a big deal. So up to this point, we've been talking pretty broadly related to use cases, right? And VMware Private AI with NVIDIA lets you deploy LLMs. It allows you to fine tune them, put some RAG on top of that to get even better details, maybe even create your own small model if you had to. What are some of the specific use cases that you're enabling for your customers, right? Is it like code generation? Is it marketing, collateral? What are you able to light up here? What are enterprises able to do with this?
Yeah, I think frankly the simplest answer is it depends truly on what the customers want to do. Our job is to provide a horizontal platform which is out of the box and turnkey that the customers can use to run their own use cases. What we have figured out are some of the low hanging use cases that customers are looking at Private AI Foundation is at the horizontal thing, it's around running, fine tuning, inferencing, RAG type of use cases, right? Those are pretty much the number one. But when it comes to why are you using that for in terms of use case, a few categories. Number one, I think if you're a technology company, and these days everybody is a technology company, and you all have software engineers to provide new services to your customer, right? It's a digital world that we live in. The code generation and co-creation of the code is one of the primary use cases that we are seeing, right? So because it's not again to replace developers. There's this big aspect like, oh, now AI can generate code. AI can help with generating better quality code in a way, right? So using your proprietary data. So it truly accelerates developer velocity rather than completely replacing developers, for example, right? So that's one of the key use cases, because privacy is very critical. As Shobhit was mentioning, a company using proprietary core data into an open source LLM model and causing a lot of challenges for that company, right? So this Private AI Foundation lets you do that in your own private environment without the data getting leaked outside. So that's one. You mentioned, Patrick, around contact center, right? So providing better customer service and customer experience using Gen AI for contact center, where you have all your support data and all your common causes and product information that contact centers need. Now you can use Gen AI to help answer customers' questions, which may be generic in nature or it may be very particular in nature for your product, in a very efficient manner. In fact, we have started using that for our own global support, right? We have thousands and thousands of SR, right? Like that we've seen, and all sorts of customer issues that we've seen over the last 20 years, right? So they've codified that, used Gen AI to now give our own support engineers an easy way of understanding. If a customer calls and says, hey, I have this problem, you can easily pinpoint why is that problem happening and what have we seen similar problems before, and give a better resolution and a faster resolution. So that's another use case that we see a lot of our customers using. And then from an IT perspective, it's making IT smarter, faster, right? Like how can you automate some of the day-to-day operational tasks using Gen AI? Like, hey, IT can, for VCF, for example, you can imagine a use case where you can ask, hey, tell me the health of my virtual machines, tell me the capacity utilization of my compute resources, right? So, hey, tell me why is this user not able to access this particular workload, right? And Gen AI can leverage the capabilities and the knowledge database that is built in within the data of the platform and give you easy answers, right? So those are some of the use cases that we are seeing, and I'm pretty sure, Shobhit, you have other examples or deeper examples within those too.
Yeah, I think Prashant covered all of it. I think the one that really strikes my chord whenever I get asked something similar is the contact center or the support example. Way back when in a previous live, I actually managed a contact center for about 40 employees or so, right? Different hardware employees, software employees, things like that. And and then I would listen to their calls, right? There was call recording, so you could then coach your agents on what to do different. In the first 15 minutes of the call, I always found painful, really excruciating, because all they would be doing is, what is your problem? Which is the hardware? Which is the hardware version? And here's the software version. And hey, I don't know anything about this. Can you give me 5 minutes to go research this paper and that paper and this document and this document, right? And by the end of, if that number, and we actually came up with data points which said, if you keep asking these questions more than 10 minutes, by the 17th minute, you're going to get screamed at, right, by the customer. So it was, we actually found very, very, tricky ways to get to that, all of those questions by about 10 to 14 minute mark, because after that, it got painful. And beyond that, then it took another hour sometimes to go actually fix the problem. And what if you had a generative AI model in which you gave this all this information, you gave that the issue resolution question, and instead of like looking at 15 wiki pages to understand, it actually gave you an answer which was 80% of the time right. The time to resolution would dramatically improve, right? And this was my day in day out. So we did what we could in 2010 timeframe, right? Building 14 wiki pages and doing all the stuff we could internally in the team. But this one really strikes the chord a lot, right? And all of us, right, particularly North America, go through these excruciating customer support calls from our cell phones to internet to whatever. And vast majority of the time we feel frustrated. The reality is those people just don't have the right tool set. They don't have the right information to even troubleshoot the problems. And all they're doing is going from 1 to 2 to 3 to trial and errors. The possibilities are mind-bogglingly great if you actually had a generative AI model in which you could feed in all this information and very quickly ask questions and very quickly actually get answers from it, right? So that's the one that strikes the chord maximum for me. And if I may just add,
Please.
there's a certain federal customer who's actually extremely interested in this for an internal chatbot for doing the same exact thing. My apologies to the team.
Hey, now she's going to be famous. I mean, this
Yeah,
happened on a broadcast interview, and
yeah,
the whole
it's
family
live.
became
You
famous.
can bring her in. It's fine. We can have a conversation as
Got
we're
to help
going
her
through that.
today.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we do have a question based on some of those use cases, which we have so many opportunities with respect to ways that this can assist to make people's workflows better, make people's output better, ensure better quality. Which are the use cases that the customers are showing the most interest in right now?
I
Yeah.
mean, I'll give. Maybe we can both give point of view. I've seen incredible amount of uptake on contact center, code generation, and content creation. I mean, I met with an enterprise that spent $200 million a year creating content. They've already cut their costs by 50%, and they have line of sight to cut that in totality 80%. Again, these are images, image creation, email creation. Those are low-hanging fruit. Human resources is another. By the way, very similar to the contact center
Mhm.
examples that both Shobhit and Prashanth had talked about. to be able to improve that, essentially human resources. And there are some companies that their upgraded chatbot has answered 85% of all the questions that could have accurately that a human could have answered. And yeah, it's pretty incredible. My final parting shot here is, again, this. I opened up the show talking about the front end to the back end. Imagine if you could optimize finance, ERP, and supply chain, and if you could lower your costs 2%, that would flow right to the bottom line in net income and improve EPS. It's a sleeper, so watch this space.
Yeah, it's going to be very. I think that the use case, when it comes to new technologies like this, the use case are let your imagination run wild is what it is, and then try it out in a crawl, walk, run phase, right? So
Right.
I can bet that there are some use cases that we haven't even imagined that's going to come into life over the next couple of years that we will be amazed by, saying what the potential is. But as Patrick and Shobhit mentioning, I think the customer experience definitely, I think, is going to be number one. The code generation comes very close, especially for customers who have large proprietary data and in the business of developing software to provide new services and products to their customer. And then basic information retrieval, right? To make your products themselves smarter and faster are some of the use cases that we are seeing in the market more and more often. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that, and your edge capabilities. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of those. So let's talk about architecture. Let's talk about ecosystem. I mean, it takes a village these days. As you said, you can't do it alone. Nobody can do this alone. And one part about your architecture is you aren't locked into a certain LLM or even an SLM, right? You can plug in the LLM that you want, and then you can fine tune it if you want. You can apply RAG against it. Can you talk a little bit about this ecosystem? I understand, companies like IBM and even Intel are on the list.
Yeah. I'll talk at a high level, right? Number one, at the different layers, starting off with the chipset vendors themselves. We talked a lot about NVIDIA because we actually have a product with NVIDIA that is generally available, which is the Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. But we are also working with other vendors like Intel, AMD, etc., to make sure our solution works with their CPUs and with their GPUs. So that's one. Next is the choice of the OEM vendors on which we can run our Private AI Foundation. So we have validated reference architectures from pretty much the broad OEM vendors that right? Like Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc., that we have worked very closely with. And then comes kind of the choice of the broad LLM models, where we have NVIDIA, obviously, with their foundational models or their fine-tuned models, but also other open source LLM models that you can run on top of Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA that we have, right, on which is based on VCF. And then we have a lot of very specific ISVs that have built specific use cases, like Hugging Face is a great example, right, with their star coder capabilities that we have worked with them, so they can run that on top of our Private AI Foundation for customers to run code generation and code co-creation as an example. So we made sure that we keep the platform open at the hardware level, at the chipset level, at the LLM level, as well as all of the new software ISVs, partners that can constantly work with us and build turnkey solutions on top of us. So that's kind of the broad ecosystem. And we also have expanded it to partners like IBM with Watson-X, right, that we can now run their models on VCF in the confines of our own private cloud and data center.
Shobhit, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I feel like that professor whose kid just walked in and got on camera. That's probably my professor moment right there.
We just kept on rolling like,
Yeah.
never happened. We
These
took a
days it's
question
very
from the
normal to have
audience,
that. Yeah.
This is the time about 3:30 Central Time when my kid comes back from school and really enjoys the attention she gets on these Zoom calls. So so that was that moment right there. Um, so I think a couple of things to add there is we continue to expand our OEM portfolio, right? So our OEM portfolio. So at this point, you'll see on our screen the big guys, Dell, Lenovo, HPE, but now all uh, the next uh, the next big guys are going to get added on soon as well. So watch our space for that. Uh, then the other piece of this is we're also partnering with UXL Foundation, right, which is a foundation which now looks at giving GPU hardware and software compatibility across the board across all providers. And so just like Prashant was mentioning, right? We're all into an open ecosystem, and we want to, make this is a customer-centric, customer-first approach, right? That we're a part of, that VMware has always been a part of, and now in our new journey under Broadcom, we're continuing to go down that path.
That's good. It's been a great conversation. We started off with what customers were looking for. We talked a little bit about your strategy and the approach. We got a little bit more focused on what were some of the nuts and the bolts that you've put together. We dug in a little bit deeper on some of the use cases here. It is early days, but there are customers out there, and I'm wondering if you can share any customer examples and how they're deriving benefits from the platform.
Yeah. I think there are several. I would say let's start off with the big industry categories, right? When we talk about privacy as the core concept, I think it's very obvious the type of customers that you can imagine from an industry vertical, right?
Yeah.
Financial service, healthcare, big public sector and federal customers. So those are some of the broad industry verticals that we are getting tremendous interest from, and we have a pretty huge pipeline of demand that we are actively running proof of concept and running in some of the production environment. So that's number one. Within that, we see like a large multinational financial services company that already had VMware Cloud Foundation, and they are using Gen AI for running things like their contact center experience, right? So where they can run their own proprietary data and run that. So that's one of the examples. There are healthcare companies that creates healthcare equipment where they again have a lot of proprietary data and they want to use Gen AI models on top of VCF to make sure they can run these models to drive better equipment creation and resolution. So, and but the reason why they're all doing is a couple of things. One is around complexity of creating this. They don't want to create yet another silo for running Gen AI within their existing infrastructure. Again, it becomes like, give me a consistent platform where Gen AI becomes just another workload, but with the key capabilities and specificity of use cases that I need. So that's one thing. So take out the complexity aspect, and a snowflake cookie cutter, another thing that they have to build is one. Cost is another huge thing. As you rightly pointed out, while there's a huge revenue benefit for using GPUs in the public cloud, you can see every token that you use for Gen AI, the metering goes in terms of the cost, right? So they're very, very careful in terms of optimizing cost, especially these days when the budgets are very stringent. So for cost benefit, it is very critical that a lot of our customers are using that. And when we have benchmarked this, we see near bare metal performance on VCF, right? With all the capabilities on infrastructure efficiency, etc., the performance of running Gen AI models is pretty much the same, or in some use cases better than bare metal. So performance becomes another key use case that a lot of our customers are looking for. In fact, we can stand up an AI cluster in less than 2 to 3 seconds on vSphere compared to public cloud or some of the bare metal where it takes minutes to hours sometime, right? So we want to make sure that it's easy, it's turnkey, and it provides the right cost benefit analysis as well as with the right performance and privacy in mind. Shobhit, I'm pretty sure you have some other use cases across the globe that you can point out to.
Yeah, and I think Prashad, you briefly touched on it as well. We have some very, very massive federal customers who are very excited about this solution because of the fact that there's a lot of government regulations on privacy and security, right? And keeping stuff on premises, keeping data on premises, and not getting it convoluted with outside. There's also, you know, we're aware. We're also in a lot of deep discussions right now with a major multinational conglomerate outside the United States who does natural resources, something related on natural resources. And they've particularly mentioned again privacy and operational efficiency as one of the big ones for them. EMEA, right? If you look at EMEA in general, right? We know because of the massive regulations that European Union has, and because each of the governments over there have some very strong compliance issues, there's a particular level of excitement in some of the big customers there because with virtual, VMware Cloud Foundation, you get compliance inbuilt, you get control inbuilt, you get the ability to get privacy, security, all of that stuff built in. But they're most concerned about the compliance issues. And guess what? When you get our platform, particularly with VMware Cloud Foundation, you already have an infrastructure that's already compliant, right? So that is the massive excitement level a lot of our EMEA customers have because of that.
Oh, I love it, guys. And, it's interesting given, customers who want private AI are not the most communicative on what they're doing and how they're doing it. I completely understand. This has been a great conversation. I hope everybody who's tuning in here found it valuable as well. A final question here: where can people go to find out more about your private AI solutions?
And I think Patrick, you may probably will release this as part of the webinar series that goes out as well. It's part of collateral, but very simple: VMware.com/AIML and VMware.com/AIML dash NVIDIA. That's very, very simple ways to remember. VMware.com/AIML, VMware.com/AIML-NVIDIA. Those are the two key websites where you can get tons of our collateral, lots of detail on our platform, and just a ton of information to read about and understand, which goes at a high level as well as get into nitty gritty stuff as well, which I know a lot of architects and engineers will want to understand.
Sounds very straightforward and one of the simplest URLs I've seen in a long time. But Shobhit and Prashanth, thank you so much for having this conversation. Thanks for having me as part of the chat here. I mean, it's absolutely, I'm no secret about my love for the private cloud in addition to hybrid multi-cloud fabrics. It's funny, I've been saying, for about 10 years, talking about the private cloud, not that I'm a public cloud denier at all, but it was mostly about talking with enterprises, looking for what they wanted. And, we're 15 years into the public cloud and 75 to 80% of the data is still on-prem or on the data center edge. Something is there. That I think we've talked about it a lot, why a lot of customers want this capability for private on-prem, and that includes AI. Because if you remember, starting 2 years ago, there was a lot of the questions that came out about, okay, now with generative AI, everybody's going to just export their most secret information up into the cloud. And I'm like, that's not going to happen, folks. To your credit, you recognize this. First came out with an architecture at Explore, and then each year you added to it, and here we are, GA. And I'm sure you're not done with the features and capabilities that you'll be adding. So everybody should be staying tuned for what's next. I know I am, and I do that because I'm an analyst, but I'm sure potential customers or anybody who's trying to figure this out, and it's so early. Everybody needs the easy button. So, Anders, I'm going to pass it off to you to close it out for us.
All righty. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining. Patrick, we always appreciate you coming in. And Prashanth and Shobhit, thanks again. I know you guys have super busy schedules, especially with Explore coming up, which is my one minor plug for the day, which is the content catalog for Explore is now live. So you can go and take a look at some of the offerings that we're going to be having and favorite those. Coming up on July 14th, you're actually going to be able to register. And speaking of registering, you can't register until you're registered for the event. So go check out the on VMware.com, the Explore page, and you can register for the event even now. We have early bird passes going out for a reduced rate for a limited time, and then the standard rate applies, I think, at the end of this week. So definitely go and take a look at that. So with that, thanks everybody. Appreciate you coming in again today, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Patrick, Prashanth, and Anders.
Thanks, guys.